it's our 40th birthday. And to celebrate, we have a very special coffee club this morning. With you this morning, Sandy Chalmers. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
Sandy was here at Radio Manchester on day one. That was September the 10th, 1970. She read the 10 o'clock news that day. And you're going to do the same again today, Sandy.
And it's a very long time since I read the news, so I'm rather terrified.
I bet. But all the same, it must be quite exciting and very nice to be back.
Very exciting. So good to be back. It's just the sting. I've got to get the sting right and the news, you know.
This is a technical term for the little tune that we play at the top of the news. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Martin Henfield is with us. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
Now, Martin was a presenter here. He was a manager of the radio station as well, and as well as being a presenter of Northwest Tonight, and he's now a freelance media trainer. Morning to you, Martin.
Good morning.
We'll be getting some of your memories, and also Diana Stenson. Now, Diana was here on day one as well of the station. She presented and produced a daily women's programme every morning, and after Radio Manchester, she went to Woman's Hour on Radio 4 and Gardener's Question Time, and she's now an actress and has been in a TV advert for the Co-op Funeral Service.
I have.
How fantastic is that?
Yes, but I'm not a stiff.
No, not at all. In fact, you don't look as if you were old enough to be in an advert for the Co-op.
Well, you're amazed as you know what they can do for you with makeup and hair and a batty old hat.
Well, I swear you look absolutely great. Let's talk about that first day then. Sandy, what do you remember about that? Tell me about it.
Well, I remember coming back from just having had my first baby.
Yeah.
And he was 11 weeks old, and I hadn't been able to do the test transmissions. I hadn't been able to do those early rehearsals, as it were, for the station. So I came in and I was pretty terrified. But there was so much excitement and the feeling that somehow Manchester at last was going to be able to talk to itself. And it was the fun of the mixture of music and speech and really opening that microphone so much wider than it had been opened before. That was great. A lot of excitement.
I bet it was. Did it feel a little like you were flying by the seat of your pants at first?
Well, certainly I was. I don't think the others were. They all looked frightfully, controlled and trained and everything else. But just coming back, when you've had a baby, you think you've got no brain anyway. And because of that, I suppose I was just thinking, what can I do? How can I gather myself? How can I get my courage together again and confidence? But it was all right because they were a great team to work with.
And did you enjoy it?
Oh, loved it. 13 of the happiest years of my life were spent in local radio. 6 years here, 7 years elsewhere.
Martin, what do you remember about it? When did you come here?
Now, don't forget, I was not a founder member. I've been through all this before. 4 weeks ago, by the way, I was a founder member at Radio Birmingham. So I've done the interviews and done the party.
The party?
Came as a second, in the second wave in 1975, inherited this sort of talent. Sandy and Diana were two of them. So my job as deputy manager in those days was to try and change the programming a little bit. I mean, after all, they'd had 5 years, very successful years. Tough it was too. We were still, even though we were 5 years old, still really in the beginning. And the BBC was very suspicious of local radio. Even though it had started in 1967, there was still a feeling that we were juniors, and some people thought we were playing at it.
Right. But of course, as time went on, that changed. Everything sort of bedded in. Did you enjoy the time, or were there ups and downs?
Oh, there were all sorts of ups and downs, but that's all a part of local radio. As Sandy says, it's terrifically exciting. The great thing about local radio is you do everything. You report, you present, you edit, you research. There is no better training ground. And to be in charge of those people was just as exciting.
No, I bet it was. Diana Stenson, what about you? What are your first memories? Because you were a founder member, weren't you?
I was a founder member. I was moved over, but in fact I'd been in on the beginning. And Martin said it was at the beginning of Birmingham. I was in on the beginning of Leeds, so of Radio Leeds, which was a couple of years before. So in fact, when I came here, I had a bit of experience, but I tell you, it was still terrifying.
How long were you here for?
I was here for about 15 years, I think. Here with you at Radio
15
Manchester.
Years, and then moved on.
And then moved on to Radio 4, and I was working on Woman's Hour, and then subsequently Gardener's Question Time and all that sort of thing. And I did nearly 30 years altogether.
Which is a long time, isn't it?
It is a long time, but I've been thinking about this so much in the last week or two, and they are the moments when you wish you'd kept a diary.
Yes.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
I didn't keep a diary, and I so wish I had done, and I've been racking my brains as to what I did on day one, and I can't remember. But as Sandy says, I think I was so terrified anyway. There was this huge new project really starting, and we were going to meet Manchester and Greater Manchester, and Manchester we hoped was going to come to us, which in fact it did. And so it was hugely successful subsequently. But the terror of it all, I can't tell you. And I think that's why I can't remember what I did, and I promise you, I have been trying.
Yes, no, I believe you. Sandy, there must have been some stories that have stuck in your mind that you covered over the years.
Yes, I suppose there were stories. We started phone-ins very, very early on. In fact, our boss used to say we started the first phone-ins, but I don't think we actually did. But there were stories. I can remember people talking about the Second World War was so much closer than it is now. And I've been listening to you earlier this week talking about the Blitz. People talked about the Blitz on the phone-in programme. And I can remember one man coming on and saying, people talked about the sights of the Blitz, but they don't talk about the smell of the Blitz. And he said one of the terrifying things for me was in the Blitz you could smell bodies burning. So there were chilling moments that actually sent a chill down your spine, and that came through on the phone-in programmes here in Manchester. But there were fun moments as well. One man I can remember ringing up, he said, it's February, Sandra, don't you? And I said, I do. And he said, do you know what we found last night in our house on the sofa? And I said, no. He said, an enormous white butterfly sitting there. And it is February, Sandy. And I said, I know. Why do you think it is? Can you give me an explanation? I said, I can't, I'm sorry. He said, we're on the flight path from Ringway, and we think it came in on a plane and just kept on flying. Anyway, you'll send your natural history people, won't you? And I sat there thinking, we are the fond of all knowledge and everything else. But the thing that when I was thinking about that enormous white butterfly on that man's sofa settee the other day was, of course, he still called it Ringway.
Yes.
Now, today you'd call it Manchester Airport and you'd not think of Ringway. But Ringway was closer then.
It changed its name in 72, didn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, 38 years ago. Martin, any stories that stand out for you that you
Well,
covered?
I'm a journalist, so we do tend to think in disaster and terror and sadness. And two big stories whilst I was here were the Manchester air disaster, where the 737 set on fire on takeoff and 56 people died. And the other one, which changed the law on furniture, was 10 dead in the Woolworths fire. Where flammable foam upholstery set off in one of the showrooms and burnt the store out, or virtually burnt it out. And they were very big stories at the time.
It is a huge news patch, and we'll be taking a look at some of the stories in this morning's newspapers, and we'll be talking about them with Sandy, Martin and Diana in just a moment. This is BBC Radio Manchester. We're 40 years old today, and I'm Heather Stott. Sandy Chalmers is having a cup of coffee with you this morning. She was here on BBC Radio Manchester's first day, September the 10th, 1970. She read the 10 o'clock news that day, and she's going to be doing exactly the same this morning. First appeared on radio at the age of 13 on Northern Children's Hour. She's the sister of Judith Chalmers, the first female manager of a local radio station, and she later went on to become editor of Radio 4's Woman's Hour in London, and she now runs a training business helping organisations to use the media. Martin Henfield is with you as well. He was a presenter, a manager here at the radio station, Northwest Tonight presenter, and now is a freelance media trainer. And Diana Stenson was here on day one of the station. She presented and produced a daily women's programme every single morning. This is BBC Radio Manchester, and we'll do what we usually do here in the Coffee Club, which is take a look through the morning's papers. One of the ways that things might have changed over the last 40 years is traditions surrounding marriage. There's a little item in the paper this morning that says why we are no longer wedded to tradition. Apparently things have changed dramatically. The bride's father asked for his permission. That used to happen 40 years ago. 47% of people used to do it. Well, men, of course. 15% in 2000. Just married sign on the car, 20% of people used to do it, only 11 do it now. Went on an immediate honeymoon, 47% of people used to do it, now only 16%. And carrying their partners across the threshold, 68% of people used to do it, only 13% now. So Martin, you're our token bloke this morning. Did you get down on one knee, and did you ask Mrs. Henfield's father for permission?
Yes, I asked him for permission. We were in the pub at the time, so I think he was in a good mood. Yeah. Did I get down on one knee? No. In fact, I can't even remember, this is absolutely true, asking the question. But I do remember my wife Maggie saying, yes, of course I will. And I thought, I haven't properly asked. And there I was married, just like that. So I was quite surprised, really. Did I carry her over the threshold? Yeah. Well, she was a bigger girl in those days. No.
So, you've been married, in 3 weeks' time, you've been married 40 years.
I have.
Well done, you.
That's a record, isn't it?
And even more well done to Mrs. Henfield, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sandy, what about you?
I was married for 22 years.
Right.
Very happily, 3 children. He did ask my mother, my father was dead sadly, but he did ask my mother for my hand in marriage, and she looked a bit disgusted, and he said he hoped to get the rest of me later. And I thought that was the best joke he'd actually made up till that time. But good years.
What about going on honeymoon? Did you go on honeymoon straight away?
We did, in our 2-tone Mini, red and rust.
Where did you go to?
We were going to go to Brittany, but as we crossed the Channel, it was grey and raining over France, and we said we'd drive till the sun shone, and we ended up in Italy.
Really?
So it was
drive that far?
Long way in a 2-tone Mini.
Right, so you went down the route of getting married. Are you surprised, I mean, when you see, you've got children yourself, are you surprised that so few people get married nowadays?
Well, I'm glad to say both my children have got married, but they did live together first.
But you're glad to say they have?
Yes, because I think it's for the kids, really. I'm the proud possessor. How do you possess grandchildren? But I've got 5 of them. And it's nice to think that those parents are married. I don't think it matters a toss, really. But it makes it a lot simpler. In recent years, I've done a lot of training, and I've done a lot of work with Help the Aged, now Age UK, of course. But one of the things when people haven't got married, a thing that worries me is that sometimes it's difficult when it comes to one of their sad deaths. And if they haven't made that legal link, they can be in a very difficult position as far as inheritance is concerned.
It can be very difficult. Now, Diana Stenson, one of the the original career women, really, never married. Nowadays, that would not be unusual at all. But then, in the 70s...
Well, most of my friends from teen days, 20s, they all got married, and I'm one of the few that didn't. And I have to say that I'm even now considered something of an exception in that I was one of those. You have a crowd of pals when you're younger and all sort of thing, and they've all got children and so forth. But I never did get married, and I have to say that one of the reasons is I think I was working so hard, and in local radio, hours didn't mean a thing. You just had to get the job done, and as Martin said earlier, you did absolutely everything. You were a researcher, you were a producer, you were a presenter, you did the lot. And I could be working at my desk maybe till 8 o'clock at night. And so, looking back, one had fun, but looking back, I just don't think that I made the opportunity to have proper relationships that actually developed. And so I never got married.
Heather, let me just tell you a true wedding story of mine that went round the world.
Go on,
In between being deputy manager of this station and coming back again, I was a TV reporter, and I went to the wedding of a man of 89 who married a woman of 95, and it was in one of the register offices here, I think Worsley.
Yeah.
And we were desperate to get something on national news. I mean, you would just on the Age alone. But she said the most wonderful quote, and it went round the world. She looked at him lovingly and said, "I've told him we can't have any babies."
Fantastic stuff. We'll talk some more in just a second. This is BBC Radio Manchester. It's our 40th birthday. More from the Coffee Club in just a second.
My name's Alec Greenhalgh. I'm the news editor. I'm trying to keep you in touch with what's happening wherever it's happening.
I'm Sandra Chalmers, and I'll be keeping you abreast with some of the news that Alec Greenhalgh will be collecting.
And that's you.
Good
40 years ago.
me.
And you're going to be doing the news today. There you were on the first day 40 years ago.
Heather. Isn't that amazing? I don't know whether the voice is deeper now, shriller. I don't know what it is, but fancy that. You've got that clip.
Just as good. Well, we'll hear you again at 10 o'clock this morning. Martin Henfield is with you and Diana Stenson as well. Now, let's carry on with some of our stories in the papers this morning. One of them is about handshakes. A strong handshake will help you hold on to life, it appears. Often seen as a sign of confidence, but a firm handshake could also signal that you will have a longer life. Men and women blessed with a strong grip tend to outlive those whose handshakes brush rather than crush, according to researchers. Well, when I saw this, I wondered about all the famous people that you must have shaken hands with back then, all the people that you have interviewed between you. And I would love to hear about the best interviews that you've done, the people who you've met who really lived up to your expectations, and the ones that didn't. Sandy, for you?
Neville Cardus, cricket writer and Guardian columnist, and could write about cricket in a poetic way that was unbelievable. And I remember interviewing him and hardly having to say a thing because the magic of his recollection of cricket and everything. But he was a man who had a firm handshake, I remember.
Really?
And those were the days when you said, "My word is my bond," and it was in the handshake that you got a job.
Really?
Yeah. So he was one,
gone.
and I'm trying to think of who was a disappointment. And I don't think I can think of a disappointment. Isn't that ridiculous?
No, not at all. I think that's very interesting because sometimes that's the way it works, isn't it? Everybody sort of lives up to their expectations. Martin, what about you?
I have to tell you that Sophia Loren was a disappointment.
You must be one of the few men in the world who can say that.
I was a disappointment for Sophia Loren. I was sent out to interview her at Piccadilly Hotel. She was on the campaign trail to promote a perfume called Sophia. I don't know whether it still exists. The boss said, I don't want any questions about Sophia. It's commercial. I don't want it at all. And what I want to hear about is her impending divorce from Carlo Ponti and her time in jail for tax evasion. Right. So I went there. There must have been 6 radio stations, all the television stations. I was first on with my little ear and microphone, and in came this vision of loveliness. Huge rose-tinted glasses, beautiful long legs. She sat alongside me on this plush red settee, crossed her legs. Now, I must say, before this had happened, 2 of her minders had come in and said, "I want no questions, none of you. None at all about her impending divorce from Carlo Ponti or her time in jail for tax evasion." So I was a bit stuck. So she sat down, she looked at me languidly. She was taller than me, sitting down, and I hesitated. I mean, when you're so close to such beauty. And I said, "Miss Loren, the listeners would love to know, love to..." She said, "What do they want to know?" She was already cold. "How you look so..." And then I realised I was going to say, "How you look so good at your age." She was about 58 then. So I said, "How you look so good, they really want to know." "What do they want to know for?" she said, dismissively. They want to know how you look so good at your age." She looked at me like I was a bad smell, got up, she said, "How old are you?" And I said, 38. And as she walked off, she said, "You really ought to look after yourself."
Dissed and dismissed. We'll talk to Diana about her interviews coming up in just a moment. This is BBC Radio Manchester. Martin Henfield is with us and Diana Stenson. We're talking about the greats that you've interviewed, the great interviews that you really enjoyed, and the ones that were a disappointment. Diana, what about you? The best one?
The best one? Well, I don't know, Heather, if you can remember the old days of the television studios we used to have, talking about old buildings as we just were, in the old Dickinson Road studios down in where were the Dickinson Road studios? Anyway, they were just
Hume.
No, that's another one. No, that was the home of the NDO. In Russia. And so occasionally we used to do a lot of television programs there, so sometimes I'd pop down and interview people who were up. And one day I went off to interview Dudley Moore, who was taking part in a musical quiz program. And so they said, "Yes, Diana," they didn't call you Miss Stenson even in those days, said, "Yes, down there, dressing room on the left." And so I went with this enormous ewer that we've been talking, these huge recording machines that we had. I've still got one shoulder lower than the other.
Big, heavy reel-to-reel tape.
They were enormous things, yes, they were. They really were. However, you didn't think about it. That was the job. So off I went to interview Dudley Moore, who was in his dressing room. And I opened the door, and there was this little chap. He was only tiny, you know. He was about 5 foot, if that. And he was wearing a little black velvet suit, like a Lord Fauntleroy suit with the lace collar and all the rest of it. And he had a club foot and a slightly squinty eye. And I looked at this man, and the sexual aura that he exuded was so great, I was hanging off the door jamb.
Really?
Not helped, I may say, by the weight of the ewer on the shoulder. Absolutely astonishing. I could hardly speak.
Tiny but incredibly sexy.
Incredibly. And as I say, as I opened the door, you just felt this. It was the most amazing experience. And subsequently, obviously, I managed to get in and get my machine going and the reel-to-reel tape and everything, and started to interview. And he was absolutely superb. And he told me all sorts of things about himself that normally you wouldn't expect people who are interviewed these days to discuss. All about his mental problems and his psychoanalyst and all that. And it was an astonishing experience, really. One that I've never forgotten. And I gathered later, I heard many years later, as we did, that, of course, he and Peter Cook, his partner in all those programmes and stuff that they did, had a fractious relationship. And the reason was that Dudley got all the women and Peter Cook didn't. And I used to think to myself, and I know why.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the worst?
Well,
Anybody
you know,
who you interviewed who you thought was very disappointing?
Interestingly enough, within a week or two of having had this experience with Dudley, I then went off to interview at the Midland Hotel Roger Moore, who was just about to be our new
James Bond.
He was going to be the new James Bond. And I was all excited about this. So off I went with the ewer, and we sat down, and I have to tell you that there was Roger Moore, a very handsome man, of course.
Very.
Absolutely. One of your English type of, yes, he was your archetypal English good-looking actor, really. So boring. I couldn't believe it. Yes, he was. He hadn't got any sparkle. He possibly developed it, but it was one of those things that he wasn't. In other words, he didn't come up to expectations and was like the kind of bland interviews you often see today. And so I remember thinking at the time, well, Dudley M, is a lot better than Roger M, and I'll have him any time.
Fancy that.
Can I tell you, Heather, about one of my worst times as manager, when I invented a programme, and the presenter was a guy called Mike Riddick. Older people will remember Mike Riddick. I think he's now with Radio Clyde. Anyway,
he is, yes.
I invented this programme called Breakfast with Riddick. Now, the difference between breakfast with Bezic, breakfast with anybody else, was that they actually ate this breakfast on the air. Yes, it was brought down on a crock plate. There was our first mistake, with metal knives and forks sitting across the microphone from each other, and they would have the full English breakfast. First guest, Peter Ustinov. We start. They start, and I have decreed you must eat at the same time, and people must hear you eat and slurp coffee. Disaster. Even Ustinov, with a mouthful of sausage, was not a genius, I can tell you. They sprayed all over the desk. He said, well, usually I'm quite good at talking, but not with my mouthful of sausage. It lasted 2 weeks.
No more fry-ups after 2 weeks.
No, afraid not.
Fantastic. It's just terrific to talk to you. We'll talk some more in just a moment. Martin, back in the day, the training was very different to the way it is now.
The induction course actually included, you mentioned the handshake, it included how to shake hands properly. It was a positive clinch, looking in the eyes of the person at that time and repeating their name.
Really?
Yes, it never got me anywhere. But it was very evangelical. It was
and you've had quite a legacy, Diana.
I have. When I was working at Radio Manchester, I went to interview somebody who named the streets and roads and so forth for Greater Manchester. And as I was leaving his office, he said, "Would you like a Stenson Street?"
Really?
And I subsequently got one, and there was a Stenson Square in East Manchester. Yes.
How fantastic. Named after you,
Well, sort of. They're not supposed to, so I said, okay, then, it can be after an ancestor.
But that is fantastic.
So the Stott cul-de-sac is on the way.
Yes. Well, thank you for making it a cul-de-sac. I thought of it as a rather major thoroughfare, but never mind. Thank you very much to Martin Henfield and to Diana Stenson. On the way, how how life has changed in 40 years. You'll hear from a woman who got divorced in the early 70s. And believe me, it wasn't as easy as it is today. She'll tell you the story coming up.
95.1 FM on digital radio and the World Wide Web.
Greater Manchester's radio station for 40 years.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 10 o'clock, an American pastor says his plans to burn copies of the Quran are on hold. And it's happy 40th birthday to BBC Radio Manchester.
In sport, Michael Carrick faces time on the sidelines.
Also, if you're going to be heading on the M60 clockwise, we've got the lane open now on the exit slip road after the earlier accident at junction 15 for the Swinton interchange.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Chalmers. An American pastor says he has suspended his plans to burn copies of the Quran, but Terry Jones from Gainesville in Florida hasn't made the final decision to abandon the idea. He's linked the burning to the willingness of Muslims in New York to drop plans for a mosque and cultural centre near the site of the World Trade Center. Mr. Jones has come under pressure from President Obama, the Pope and Muslims in the US and overseas. Yesterday, he had talks with a Florida imam, Mohammed Musri.
I said, who are you waiting for? God himself to come down and tell you, Pastor Jones, that's enough? And he laughed. I said, it's very serious. I mean, how many people do you want to tell you what you're about to do is dangerous and people's lives would be at stake here?
Police say 2 men who died in a collision on the M6 in Cheshire yesterday were a 69-year-old from St Helens and a 39-year-old from Ashton in Makerfield. Their families have been informed. The motorway was closed for over 10 hours following the incident near Sandbach yesterday morning. A 60-year-old HGV driver from Selby in North Yorkshire, who was being questioned on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, has been bailed. A Cheshire MP is insisting that the government's public spending cuts are necessary to avoid the UK economy collapsing. David Mowat, who represents Warrington South, says the bulk of the deficit should be paid off by cutting the size of the public sector rather than increasing taxes. On North West Tonight's spending review debate last night, he warned against the consequences of not paying off the debt.
The position that we've been left in by the previous government is that our country has the biggest deficit of any country in the G20. Now, it's very important to understand we're not paying the deficit off. All we're doing is stopping it going up so quickly. The 155 billion isn't the amount the country owes. That's the amount the deficit is going up every year.
The government's revealed some of the cost-cutting ideas it's bringing in that were suggested by members of the public. About 100,000 ideas were submitted through a government website. National insurance cards will be replaced by letters, and old government office equipment will be auctioned off. Manchester City fans have been giving their verdict on a new film about the club. Blue Moon Rising documents a year in the life of the richest club in the world, its manager, players and fans. It had its world premiere in Manchester last night with celebrities like Noel Gallagher on the blue carpet. These City fans who've seen it have given a big thumbs up.
Absolutely brilliant, buzzing from start to finish. When I was watching it, I was tingling down my spine. It was just like being in the ground on Derby Day. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. I think I'm more passionate now as a Blue. I mean, I've always been passionate, but it just got a lump in my throat. It really did.
Absolutely brilliant. Ups, downs. It's all about the City fans, man. That's what it is. It's got Hollywood written all over it. You got sadness. He was laughing. He was crying. It was all good.
And BBC Radio Manchester is celebrating our 40th birthday today. We began broadcasting from Piccadilly Gardens on the 10th of September 1970.
The time now is exactly 5 1/4 minutes past 6. You're in tune with BBC Radio Manchester. Well, here we are. We've arrived.
That was Alan Sykes, the first voice on Radio Manchester. He now lives in Spain and has been sharing some of his memories.
It gave the opportunity of people to air their knowledge, air their views, and there's Mr. Hall from from Northern rang in and just boldly said, "Oh, good morning, Alan." He said, "How do you get Evo stick off a parrot?" And I said, "How do you get Evo stick?" Well, if it's holding tightly onto the tin, you ask it to let go nicely.
BBC BBC Radio Manchester. Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Michael Carrick has been ruled out for 3 weeks with an Achilles injury. It means the Manchester United midfielder will miss the Premier League games with Everton, Liverpool and Bolton, and the Champions League fixtures at home to Rangers and away at Valencia. Noel Gallagher believes Manchester City may have to wait a little bit longer to overtake United as the biggest club in the world. The Oasis man was on the blue carpet at the premiere of Blue Moon Rising last night, and he told BBC Radio Manchester that as long as Sir Alex Ferguson remains at Old Trafford, the Reds will be the team to beat. The 3 Pakistan cricketers originally suspended by the International Cricket Council to return home. Salman Butt, Mohammad Asif and Mohammad Amir were the subject of spot-fixing allegations. A statement from the team's security manager revealed they have not been charged with any offence and will return if requested to do so by police. And the Super League playoffs kick off tonight with Warrington visiting St Helens. Wolves coach Tony Smith says he faces a selection dilemma ahead of the match at Knowsley Road, and you can hear full match commentary in Manchester Sport from 6 o'clock.
Join me, Becky Want, from 2 today when, as part of our 40th birthday celebrations, we look back at fashion, television and Manchester nightlife in the 70s.
And the weather. It'll stay cloudy this morning with some heavier outbreaks of rain at first. The rain will become lighter and more patchy during the morning, then mainly dry this afternoon with some bright spells developing. Cloudy with rain returning this evening. Top temperature 21 Celsius.
Greater Manchester's radio station since 1970.
This is Radio Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester is 40.
It's the capital station of the Northwest.
Happy birthday, BBC Radio Manchester.
We have interesting programs designed for every age. There'll be music from the hit parade, the cinema and stage. Lots of news and opinions, topical and witty, all from Piccadilly Gardens